The morning after break stayed, Amanda found a drawing on the kitchen table. Maya had been up before both of them apparently, which should not have surprised anyone who knew Maya, and she had taken her purple crayon and a piece of paper from the craft drawer, and she had drawn 3 figures standing in front of a building that was clearly meant to be their townhouse because it had a door and 2 windows and a small orange circle near the bottom that represented the mom on the front step. 3 figures. A tall one with long hair, Amanda. A small one with a circle head and what appeared to be bare ears on top, Maya. And a third figure, taller than both, standing on Maya's side, close, with straight black lines for hair. Break. Underneath the drawing, in purple crayon, in Maya's careful kindergarten print. My family. Amanda stood at the kitchen table in the early December morning and looked at that drawing for a long time. She heard Break's footsteps behind her. She heard him stop. She didn't turn around because she didn't trust her face yet. The silence lasted only a few seconds before Maya came barreling out of her bedroom in her pajamas and bare ears, and went directly to the drawing with the proprietary energy of an artist presenting her work. I made it this morning, she announced. Do you like it? It's beautiful bug, Amanda managed. Maya looked up at Break. That's you, she said, pointing to the third figure. I made you the tallest because you are the tallest. She studied the drawing critically. I forgot to put your glasses. You don't always wear them, but sometimes you do. She picked up the purple crayon from the table with complete intention. Hold on. She added 2 small squares to the tall figure's face. There, she said, satisfied. She put the crayon down and looked at both of them with the expression of someone who had accomplished something important. Can I have cereal? She asked. Amanda turned to get the bowls. Behind her she heard Break pick up the drawing. She heard the silence of him looking at it. She did not hear him put it down. Later, when she came back to the kitchen, it was gone from the table. That evening she would walk past the open door of Break's unit. He had left it ajar while carrying something in from his car, and she would see, on the otherwise completely bare wall of his living room, one thing. Maya's drawing. Hung carefully, centered, like something that belonged there. Amanda would stand in the hallway and press her hand over her heart and breathe. And then she would go inside and make dinner and feel, for the first time in 11 months, like the ground under her feet was solid. She didn't know yet that in 4 days that ground would move again. December in Chicago was not subtle. It arrived with full commitment. Gray skies, lake wind that cut through every coat. The kind of cold that made the city feel both smaller and more intimate. Everyone pulled inward, closer to warmth, closer to whatever they decided mattered. Amanda had always loved December for that reason. The enforced honesty of cold weather. The way it stripped everything back to what was essential. What was essential, she was discovering, had shifted. She and Break had not defined anything. There had been no conversation with labels or declarations or the particular awkwardness of 2 adults trying to name something still forming. There was just presence. The natural, ungoverned accumulation of shared evenings and morning coffees and elevator rides and Maya talking at both of them simultaneously, as though they were a unit that had always existed. He came for dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He brought coffee on Saturday mornings, 2 cups, without being asked. He fixed the kitchen faucet that had been dripping for 6 weeks without mentioning he'd noticed it dripping. Just appeared one Saturday afternoon with a wrench and 20 minutes later it was silent. He read to Maya sometimes when Amanda was finishing something in the kitchen. His low, careful voice moving through picture books with a focus and sincerity that Maya received like sunlight. He had not kissed her. He held her hand sometimes, briefly, in the specific way of someone who needed the contact and was honest about needing it. He touched her face once, in the hallway after a hard day, just briefly, just the back of his fingers against her cheek, checking her the way you check something precious. But he hadn't kissed her. And Amanda, who had been proposed to at 23 and married at 24 and divorced at 30, and was in no position to rush anything, found herself thinking about it more than was probably wise. You're glowing, Carmen said on Wednesday, refilling the coffee station at the nurse's desk with the energy of someone who ran entirely on observation and espresso. Carmen had been Amanda's closest work friend for 4 years, and had the particular gift of noticing everything while pretending to notice nothing. You've been glowing for 2 weeks. What's happening? Nothing's happening. Amanda Renee Collins. I'm just sleeping better. Carmen looked at her with enormous skepticism. Sleeping better doesn't make a person look like that. She gestured at Amanda's general face. Looking like that requires a specific kind of activity. Carmen. Is it the neighbor? Amanda kept her eyes on the chart she was updating. I don't know what you're talking about. Maya told me about the neighbor, Carmen said serenely. She called me on your phone 3 weeks ago, which you clearly don't know about, and she told me, and I quote, Mr. Seo has a nice sad face and mommy likes him, but she pretends she doesn't. Amanda set the chart down. She is 5 years old, Amanda said. She is 5 years old and she is entirely correct, Carmen said. Stop pretending. Life is short. I watched you survive the last 11 months on cold coffee and determination, and you deserve something warm. Amanda looked at her friend. It's complicated, she said. All the good things are, Carmen said, and went back to the coffee station. Jerome came on Saturday. He had come the previous Saturday too, which was 2 consecutive Saturdays, which was, Amanda counted carefully, the first consecutive Saturdays since before the divorce. He arrived at 10 as agreed. He had Maya's favorite donuts, the ones from the bakery on Fullerton that had the rainbow sprinkles she'd been requesting since August. Maya, who had been standing at the window watching for his car for 20 minutes, and had refused to admit she was watching for his car, erupted from the front door before Jerome had fully gotten out of his vehicle. He caught her, held her, and Amanda, watching from the doorway, saw something in his face that was real and sorry and too late in some ways and not entirely too late in others. She stepped back inside and gave them the morning. Break was not there on Saturdays when Jerome came. This had been an unspoken agreement that Amanda appreciated more than she'd said. He understood the geometry of it. Maya needed her father needed the space to be her father, and Break's presence would complicate something that needed to be simple. He texted her at noon. How is it going? She texted back. He brought the rainbow donuts. She's been talking for 2 hours straight. He's listening. A pause. Then, good. 1 word. But she felt it. Jerome asked to speak with her privately before he left. Maya was in her room showing her stuffed animal something she'd learned in gymnastics, which bought approximately 15 minutes of uninterrupted adult conversation. They stood in the kitchen, Amanda with her coffee, Jerome with his hands in his pockets, and he looked around the kitchen with the expression of someone visiting a place they used to know. She seems happy, he said. She is. Really happy. He looked at Amanda. Not just okay. Actually happy. The way she used to be before. He stopped. Before you left, Amanda said, not cruelly, just completing the sentence. He nodded, absorbing it. I owe you an apology, he said. Not for the divorce. I think the divorce was real, and I think we both knew it wasn't working for a long time. He paused. But for how I handled what came after. The cancellations. The distance. His jaw tightened. The custody petition. He looked at her directly. That was wrong. I was angry about things I didn't know how to say, and I used the legal system as a weapon against the person who least deserved it. Against the best mother I have ever seen. Amanda held very still. I'm not saying this to get anything, Jerome said. I'm saying it because it's true and because you should hear it. He paused. She told me about the lists. She showed them all to me. Every one. His voice thickened slightly. She kept every list, Amanda. I know. She was ready every time. Even when I didn't come. She was ready. He pressed his lips together. I'm going to do better. Not for you because I've forfeited that right. For her. He held Amanda's gaze. She deserves someone who shows up. Amanda looked at her ex-husband. This man she had loved and built a life with and grieved and been angry at and slowly stopped being angry at. Yes, she said quietly. She does. A pause. The man next door, Jerome said carefully. Amanda said nothing. She talks about him. He nodded slightly. She says he reads to her. She says he came to see her tooth. A pause. She says he hung her drawing on his wall. Amanda kept her expression even. Is he good to her? Jerome asked. Yes. Is he good to you? A longer pause. Yes, Amanda said. Jerome nodded once. Something settled in his face. Okay, he said. That's okay. He called for Maya. At the door, Maya hugged him with both arms and both legs in the way she hugged people she was not yet sure she could trust with a smaller hug, the full-body commitment of a child hedging toward hope. "Next Saturday?" she said, her face against his shoulder. "Next Saturday," he said. "I'll be here." She leaned back and looked at him, searching his face, making her quiet calculation. "Okay," she said, and she meant it. It started on a Tuesday. Amanda noticed it the way you noticed weather changing gradually, then all at once. Break was quieter than usual at dinner. Not absent, not unkind, just pulled back slightly, like something had moved behind the glass of his composure. She didn't press it. She knew him well enough by now to know that pressing wasn't the way in, that he needed space to find his way to the door rather than having it knocked down. Wednesday he texted to cancel dinner. Work situation. "I'm sorry," she texted back. "No problem. Let me know if you need anything." He didn't respond. Thursday she heard him come home late, past midnight, which was unusual. She heard his door. She heard nothing else. Friday he was gone before she left for work. His car was not in its spot. Saturday arrived and no coffee. Amanda stood in her kitchen at 8 o'clock in the morning looking at the space where 2 cups usually appeared and felt the specific, terrifying recognition of a pattern she knew too well. The pulling away, the going quiet, the slow retreat of someone who had decided, without saying so, to take their presence back. She told herself she was misreading it. She told herself he was busy. The acquisition was in a critical phase. She knew his work consumed him when it needed to. She told herself many reasonable things while standing in her kitchen with 1 cup of coffee instead of 2. Maya noticed on Sunday. She hadn't seen Break since Thursday dinner and she asked about it in the direct, unguarded way she asked everything. "Where's Mr. Seo? Working hard this week, I think. Can we knock?" "Not right now, Bug." Maya looked at the wall that separated their units. She looked at it for a long moment with that particular thinking expression, her small brow furrowed. "Is he okay?" she asked. "I think so. He seemed sad on Thursday," Maya said. "More sad than his regular sad." She paused. "He looked at me weird when I said good night." Amanda set down her dish towel. "Weird how?" Maya thought about it. "Like when you look at something and you're happy and sad at the same time," she said. "Like how you looked at Grandma's picture on her birthday." Amanda was very still. "Okay, Bug," she said softly. She knew, then, what she hadn't let herself know for the past 5 days. She knocked on his door Sunday evening after Maya was in bed. It took him longer than usual to answer. When he opened the door he looked, not broken, Break would never look broken, but something close to the edges of it. Like a man who had been somewhere very dark and had come back but was still carrying the dark with him. "Amanda, I'm not here to push," she said. "I just need to know you're all right." He stepped back. She came in. His apartment was different. Not visibly, nothing moved or changed, but the atmosphere of it was heavier, like weather pressure dropping before a storm. His laptop was open on the desk, papers spread. A glass of whiskey she wasn't sure he'd touched. "December 10th, he said before she could speak. She looked at him. "Jiun died on December 10th. He said it quietly, looking at the window. 3 years ago. He paused. "I always feel it coming. A week before. The world gets louder. The absence gets louder." He turned to look at her. "I'm sorry for the distance. It wasn't about you." "I know," Amanda said. "I know it wasn't. It's just," he stopped. Started again with the visible effort of a man not accustomed to saying difficult things aloud. "This year is different. Every year I feel it coming and I go somewhere internal and I wait for it to pass and it passes and I continue." He looked at her with something raw and undefended in his expression. "This year I don't want to just continue." Amanda crossed the room and sat on the couch. After a moment he came and sat beside her. Not close, just near. "Tell me about December 10th, she said. He looked at her. "Tell me what that day was like," she said. "The real version, not the managed version. Tell me what you lost." A long silence. Then Break Seo, who had crossed 14 cities without settling, who managed crises with the composure of someone who had removed his own feelings from the equation. who had pressed his hand against a wall in the dark to be near a woman who was crying and said nothing because he didn't know how to say the right thing. He told her. He told her about the Thursday it happened, a regular Thursday, a day that had started with Ji-Yeon's alarm at 6:30 and the particular smell of the coffee she made and a brief argument about nothing, something stupid. He couldn't even remember what, and the way they'd kissed before she left anyway because they had a rule about that, never leave without the kiss, even when you were annoyed. He told her about the phone call at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He told her about the waiting room and the 2 hours and 20 minutes and the doctor's face. He told her about the name they had chosen for a girl, Sua, and the name they had chosen for a boy, Juno, and how Ji-Yeon had been writing them in different styles in a notebook, practicing the handwriting, and how that notebook was still in a box in his Seoul apartment that he hadn't been able to open. He told her about the first morning he'd woken up and reached across the bed and found nothing, and how that nothing had lived in his hands ever since. A tactile absence he carried everywhere. He told her about 14 cities. He told her that he had not, in 3 years, wanted to stay anywhere. He told her that he had not, in 3 years, felt anything that required him to stay. His voice was completely even throughout. That was the most devastating thing about it. The control, the precise and careful control of a man who had learned to hold the most catastrophic pain behind the most unshakable composure, and the way that composure cost him something visible, something she could see him spending in real time. When he finished, the apartment was very quiet. Amanda reached over and took his hand. He looked down at their hands. She would be 3 years old, he said. Sua. A pause. Or Juno. We never knew. His hand tightened slightly on hers. I think about that. What they would look like. Whether they would have had her laugh. A long silence. I think about it more since Maya. Amanda looked at him. Maya makes you think about what you lost, she said softly. Not a question. Maya makes me think about what is possible, he said. He looked at her, and his eyes were completely open, all the careful distance gone. That is what frightened me this week. Not the grief. I know the grief. I know how to survive it. He paused. What frightened me was realizing that I have started to want something again. Something real. Something that requires me to stay. He held her gaze. And wanting something again after losing everything feels. He stopped. Terrifying, Amanda said. Yes. Because if you want it, you can lose it. Yes. She understood this in her body, not just her mind. The specific terror of opening your hands again after everything you'd been holding had been taken. Break, she said quietly. Can I tell you something? Yes. The night Maya asked me why you didn't love me anymore. She stopped, corrected herself. The night Maya asked why her father didn't love me anymore. I lay in my bed afterward and I felt more alone than I have ever felt in my life. More alone than the night Jerome told me he was leaving. More alone than signing the divorce papers. She paused. And then I became aware that on the other side of the wall there was someone who was also awake. I didn't know you. I didn't know anything about you except that you were there. Awake in the same dark. She looked at their hands. It helped. Just that. Just not being the only person awake. He was listening with his entire body. I am not asking you to stop grieving Ji-Yeon, she said. I would never ask that. She was yours and she will always be yours, and I think she sounds like the most extraordinary person, and I think she would be furious with you for spending 3 years in 14 cities not settling anywhere. She looked at him. I think she would have knocked on our door within 48 hours and known everyone's name and brought food, and she would have loved Maya immediately and completely, and she would have told you. Her voice softened. She would have told you that wanting something again doesn't betray what you lost. It honors it. Break looked at her for a long, silent moment. Something moved through his face that she had never seen before. Not the ghost of the smile, not the careful neutrality, not even the unguarded openness of the last hour. Something deeper and more final than all of it. The expression of a man arriving somewhere after a very long journey. She would have said exactly that, he said. His voice was rough. In those exact words. She would have sat across from me and refused to leave until I heard it. Then hear it, Amanda said. He looked at their hands. Then he looked at her. And he said, quietly and completely and without any of the careful distance, I don't want to be in 14 more cities. I want to be here. Then be here, Amanda said. He lifted his free hand and touched her face, the back of his fingers against her cheek, the way he had in the hallway, but longer this time, more deliberate, and she leaned into it and closed her eyes. I'm terrified, he said. I know, she said. Me too. I haven't, he paused. I haven't let myself. I know. Amanda. She opened her eyes. He was looking at her with everything showing, the grief and the want and the terror and the 3 years of carrying something enormous alone and the 11 months of her carrying something enormous alone and the thin shared wall between them and the grocery bags at the door and the note and Maya's 12 stars and all of it present in his expression simultaneously. Can I? He started. Yes, she said, before he finished the sentence, because she already knew. He kissed her, not rushed, not desperate, with the same focused, unhurried attention he brought to everything that mattered. His hand moved from her cheek to her jaw, and she felt the weeks of waiting and the 3 years of distance and the 11 months of surviving dissolve into something present and warm and entirely, unmistakably real. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead against his and they both breathed for a moment. Just that, just breathing in the same space. December 10th, she said softly. What do you need tomorrow? He was quiet for a moment. I don't want to be alone, he said. That's all. He stopped. I've been alone for it 3 times. You won't be alone this time, she said. He closed his eyes. Okay, he said. Just that. Okay. She told Maya in the morning that Mr. Seo was having a sad day and that they were going to be kind about it. Maya received this information with the gravity it deserved. What kind of sad? She asked. The kind that comes once a year, Amanda said carefully. He lost someone he loved very much, and today is the day he remembers it. Maya was quiet, processing. Like how we have Grandma's picture out on her birthday? She said. Exactly like that. Maya slid off her chair and went to her room. She came back with a piece of paper and her purple crayon, and she sat at the kitchen table with her tongue slightly out the way it came out when she was concentrating, and she drew for 10 minutes. Then she folded the paper very carefully, the way she folded things she wanted to keep. She went to the front door and opened it and went next door and knocked before Amanda could say anything. Amanda stood in her own doorway watching. Break opened the door. He looked tired in the way of someone who had not slept. But he was dressed and composed, and he looked down at Maya with an expression that was already complicated before she even spoke. Maya held the folded paper up to him with both hands. I made this for you, she said. For your sad day. He took it, opened it. Amanda couldn't see it from where she stood. She saw his face. She saw the exact moment he saw what was on the paper. The precise second when the composure cracked, not dramatically, not with a sound, just a single visible fracture in the careful surface of him. His jaw moving slightly, his eyes going still and bright. He crouched down. He looked at Maya at her level. Thank you, he said. And his voice was rough in a way Maya had never heard it. Maya studied his face with those enormous eyes. Then she did something that Amanda would carry inside her body for the rest of her life. She stepped forward and put both her small arms around his neck. She hugged him, fully, completely, with the whole body commitment she reserved for the people she had decided were hers. Break's eyes closed. His arms came up around her small back, careful and overwhelming, the embrace of a man receiving something he had not known he was still allowed to want. Maya's voice, muffled against his shoulder, matter of fact and certain. You can be sad and we'll still be here. Amanda put her hand over her mouth. The hallway blurred. She pressed her back against her doorframe and looked at the ceiling and breathed through it, because she had promised herself she would not fall apart in the hallway, and she was going to keep that promise. But God, you can be sad and we'll still be here. 5 years old. Purple crayon. More wisdom than most people arrived at in a lifetime. When she looked back, Break had pulled back from the hug and was holding Maya's face in both his hands and looking at her with the open, devastated tenderness of a man who had just had something restored to him that he'd stopped believing could be restored. You are remarkable, he told her. Maya accepted this. I know, she said. Can you come for breakfast? Mommy makes eggs on Mondays. He looked up at Amanda. She looked at him. She shrugged, palms up. What are you going to do? Yes, he said. I'll come for breakfast. Later that afternoon, while Maya napped, Amanda sat with Break on his couch in the quiet of December 10th, and he showed her a photograph on his phone. Jian, laughing, eyes completely closed from the force of it. At a restaurant somewhere, head thrown back, completely unself-conscious, alive in every pixel. "She's beautiful," Amanda said. "She never took a photograph where she wasn't laughing," Brake said. "Every single one. I used to try to take serious photos and she would always—" He showed the next photo. Ji-yeon, clearly caught mid-laugh again, holding up a hand to block the camera. She said serious photos were for people who had forgotten how to be happy. Amanda looked at the photos for a long time. "Tell me a story about her," she said. "A good one." He looked at her. "Tell me something funny," she said. "Something that made you love her." And he did. He talked about Ji-yeon for an hour, and it was the first time in 3 years he had talked about her to someone who was listening not out of obligation or pity but out of genuine desire to know, to understand, to honor the shape of who she had been. And something happened in that hour that neither of them had quite expected. The grief didn't disappear. It didn't shrink exactly. It became accompanied, known by someone else, shared across the distance between two people sitting on a couch on December 10th in Lincoln Park while the city pressed cold against the windows. Brake showed her the last photo. Ji-yeon, from behind, standing at a window exactly like the one in his apartment, looking out at a city. Her hand on the glass, the light around her. "She used to stand like that," he said, "at every window in every place we lived." She said she was memorizing the view. He was quiet for a moment. She said you should always know what your life looks like from the inside. Amanda looked at the photograph. Then she looked at the window of his apartment. She got up. She went to the window and stood the way Ji-yeon was standing in the photograph. Hand on the glass, looking out at December Chicago, the lake visible in the far distance, the neighborhood spread below them, the bare trees and the string lights someone had wrapped around the oak on their street, and the small orange mum on Amanda's front step, still alive despite the cold, still ferociously there. She heard Brake stand. She heard him cross to her. He stood beside her at the window. "What does it look like?" he said quietly. She looked out at the city, at their street, at the building that had held 2 grieving people in adjacent units for 2 months while something inevitable and unhurried gathered itself. "Like home," she said. His hand found hers on the glass. They stood at the window. Just that. Just together. Christmas came to Lincoln Park the way it came to neighborhoods that had decided to commit. Fully, without apology, every door with a wreath, every window with light. The oak tree on their street now draped in white lights by persons unknown that made the whole block glow at night like something from a story. Amanda's apartment smelled like cinnamon and the pine candle she bought every December, and Maya's current craft project, which involved an ambitious quantity of glitter that had migrated to every surface in the kitchen. Life had found a new shape. Not the shape of before Jerome. Not the shape of the 11 terrible months after. Something new. Something that fit differently, that had been built from what was actually true rather than what was supposed to be. Jerome came every Saturday. Twice he'd come on a weekday too, just to take Maya for an after-school donut, just to be there in a small, unremarkable way that was building something slowly and carefully between them. He and Amanda had arrived at a functional civil warmth, not friendship, not quite, but something honest. Something that put Maya first without requiring either of them to pretend the past hadn't happened. Brake had stopped moving through days and started living in them. It was subtle. The kind of change you only noticed in accumulation. He laughed more. Not loudly, that wasn't who he was, but genuinely, the kind of quiet, real laugh that came from somewhere he hadn't been accessing. He knew the names of Maya's entire class, reported to him in daily installments whether he asked or not. He had a coffee mug at Amanda's apartment, his own mug, that lived in the cabinet next to hers without ceremony or announcement, and she had a key to his unit that had appeared on her kitchen table one morning with no note needed. He had told his company he would need an extension on the Chicago assignment. He had not told Amanda this directly. She'd found out from Sophia, his assistant, who'd run into Amanda in the lobby and said, with the calm efficiency of someone who noticed things, "I understand congratulations are in order on the extension," and walked away before Amanda could ask what she meant. She'd stood in the lobby for a moment. Then she'd smiled. The kind of smile that started somewhere in the chest before it reached the face. The Saturday before Christmas, they took Maya to the Millennium Park ice rink. This had been Maya's request, delivered with the formality of a formal proposal. "I would like to go ice skating, and I would like both of you to come, and I would like hot chocolate after with the big marshmallows." The rink was crowded with the particular energy of a city celebrating. Children in bright coats, couples holding hands. The enormous Christmas tree visible beyond the rink, making everything feel like the inside of a snow globe. Maya skated between them, each hand in one of theirs, her bare ears on under her hat, absolutely convinced she was faster than she was. "I'm going fast," she announced. "You're doing great," Amanda said. "Mr. CO, am I going fast?" "Very fast," Brake said with complete sincerity. Maya beamed. She let go of both their hands for approximately 3 seconds, during which she wobbled dramatically, grabbed for support, found Brake's coat sleeve and held on. "Okay," she said, recalibrating. "Holding on is also fine." "Holding on is very fine," Amanda agreed. They skated in a slow circle, the three of them, Maya between them narrating everything she saw with the enthusiasm of a sports commentator. And Amanda looked across Maya's hat at Brake and found him already looking at her. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked down at Maya, this small, fearless person gripping his sleeve and informing them both about a child across the rink who had just fallen and gotten back up in what she considered impressive time. Amanda watched his face while he watched Maya. She thought about Ji-Eun's notebook, the names practiced in different handwriting, the window in the photograph, the 2 cups in the cabinet. She thought about purple crayon lists and December 10th and a note slipped under a door and groceries left without explanation. She thought about walls between people, how thin they were, how much passed through them that was never spoken, how much could be heard if you were awake enough to listen. She thought about Maya at 2 in the morning looking up at the ceiling in a room where the dark felt too quiet and deciding to leave the light on. The dark felt too quiet. She understood that now in a way she hadn't before. The dark had felt too quiet and they had both, separately, been lying awake in it for a very long time. And then the wall between them had let sound through. And neither of them was as alone as they'd been. After hot chocolate with the big marshmallows as contractually required, Maya fell asleep in the car on the way home, her head against Brake's arm in the back seat where she'd insisted on sitting between them. Brake did not move his arm. He sat completely still so she wouldn't wake, the way parents learn to do, the instinctive stillness of someone who understood that sleeping children were precious and precarious and worth any amount of personal discomfort. Amanda, in the passenger seat, watched them in the mirror. Maya asleep, her mouth slightly open, her hat askew, the bare ears bent sideways. Brake with his arm perfectly still, his head turned slightly to look out the window at the city lights. His expression so completely soft and unguarded that she almost had to look away from it. She didn't look away. "Brake," she said softly. He looked up, met her eyes in the mirror. "She drew something else," Amanda said. "Last week. I was going to tell you but then," she paused. "I kept waiting for the right moment." "What did she draw?" Amanda reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She passed it back to him. He opened it with his free hand, carefully so as not to wake Maya. He looked at it for a long time. Amanda watched his face in the mirror. The drawing was similar to the first one, 3 figures in front of the building. But Maya had added things to this version with the developing confidence of an artist who had decided to be more specific. The tall figure with the straight black hair had a small heart drawn on his chest in purple crayon. There was a small square on the wall behind the figures, representing a drawing hung up. Maya's drawing hung on his wall. And at the bottom, in Maya's careful print, the caption had changed. It no longer said "my family." It said, "our family." Brake looked at the drawing for a long time. When he looked up and found Amanda's eyes in the mirror, his were bright. "She changed the word," Amanda said softly. "I see that. She didn't tell me. I found it in her art drawer." He looked at the drawing again. Then at Maya sleeping against his arm. Then at Amanda. "Amanda," he said. "I know," she said. "I want." He stopped, looked at Maya, at the drawing, at Amanda. "I want this to be real," he said. "Not temporary, not a chapter. I want." He paused, finding the words with precision, the way he always did, saying nothing until he was sure he meant it. "I want to be someone she can count on, someone you can count on, not passing through." He held her gaze in the mirror. "I want to stay." The city moved past the windows, the Christmas lights on every block. Maya breathing softly against his arm. Then stay, Amanda said. Simple. Complete. The only answer there had ever been. He exhaled slowly. Something settled in his face that she had never seen before. Not the relief of a decision made, but the deeper, quieter thing that came after. The settling of a person who had finally, after a very long time, arrived somewhere. Home. Christmas morning arrived the way it arrived in apartments with 5-year-olds. At 5:47 a.m. at full volume without warning. Mommy. Mommy. He came. Santa came. Mommy, wake up. Amanda surfaced from sleep to find Maya standing over her with the energy of someone who had been awake for at least an hour waiting for a socially acceptable time to begin. Bug, it's not even 6. It's Christmas. There was no argument for that. She got up. She made coffee. She texted Break. She's up. It's chaos. Come over when you're ready. His response came in under a minute. Already awake. 2 minutes. He arrived with his coffee and a bag that Maya immediately identified as containing presents and erupted about accordingly. They sat on the living room floor, the 3 of them in the early Christmas morning, Maya distributing gifts with the focused authority of someone who had been thinking about this for weeks. She had presents for both of them. For Amanda, a small ceramic mug she had painted at the school craft fair, covered in purple dots and a handprint, and the words Best Mommy in slightly wobbly letters. For Break, a small framed photograph. Amanda had not known about this one. Maya had apparently asked Jerome on one of his recent visits to take a photograph on Amanda's phone. Amanda had found the request baffling when she'd seen the camera roll. A slightly blurry photo of Amanda and Break sitting at the kitchen table talking, both unaware of being photographed. The light from the window on both of them mid-conversation, completely natural and entirely themselves. Maya had taken the phone to the drugstore photo counter with Jerome the previous Saturday. She had picked the frame herself. Small, wooden, painted white with small gold stars around the edges. Break held it and looked at it for a long moment. The photograph of 2 people who had found each other through a thin wall and grief and purple crayon lists, and a child who had simply refused to accept that the people she loved should be sad. He looked at Maya. You did this yourself? He said. Daddy helped, she said. But it was my idea. Break looked at Amanda. She looked at him. There were no words adequate to the moment, so neither of them tried to find any. Maya, satisfied with the reception of her gifts, moved on to opening her own with focused intensity, narrating each one. And Amanda sat on the Christmas morning floor of the life she had rebuilt from the floor up, and she watched Break set the photograph carefully on the mantel above the electric fireplace. Next to Maya's drawing, the second one, Our Family in purple crayon, and she thought about everything it had cost to get here. The cold bath water. The lists in the backpack. The next time written in wobbling crayon. The wall between them. The note slipped under the door. December 10th. The 12 stars. She thought about her daughter, 5 years old, who had looked at 2 sad people and decided with complete authority that they were going to be okay. Who had kept her lists even when she had every reason to stop. Who had taught herself to reorganize disappointment. Yes, but who had also, quietly and stubbornly and with infinite faith, kept making new ones. Because some things were worth the list. Some things were worth staying ready for. Even when they took longer than expected. Even when the dark felt too quiet. Even when you'd been waiting so long you'd almost stopped believing. Maya looked up from a box of art supplies she'd wanted since October and announced, to the room in general, "This is the best Christmas." Yeah, Amanda said. Yes. She looked at both of them with the frank, certain gaze of a child who had decided something and was confirming it aloud. Because we're all here. She went back to her art supplies. Break found Amanda's hand. He held it. Outside, Chicago was white and still and beginning. The city exhaling into Christmas morning with the particular quiet that came only once a year. The brief, impossible pause where everything softened. Amanda leaned her head against Break's shoulder. He pressed his lips to the top of her head. Maya hummed to herself over her new crayons. Purple ones. A whole new set. And somewhere in Gerald the Turtle backpack in the front pocket there was one final list. Maya had made it the week before Christmas. It didn't say things to show Daddy. It didn't say things and people that make me happy. It said, at the top in the biggest letters Maya's crayon could make, things that are good. And the list was long. Longer than any of the others. The star shoes. Gerald. Hot chocolate with big marshmallows. Grandma's picture. Daddy coming on Saturdays. Mommy's laugh. Mr. CO reading stories. Our family. And at the very bottom, underlined twice, surrounded by stars. So many stars, more than 12 this time, she'd lost count and kept going. Just that. It was enough. It was everything. And that is the end of Amanda, Maya and Break's story. From the cold bathwater and the question that broke everything open, to purple crayon lists and 12 stars and a little girl who never stopped believing, they made it. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me which moment got you the most. I'll see you in the next one.